Hey, and welcome in. It is time once again for the GenWealth Radio Hour and our live online version of the show. We are glad to have you along. My name is Scott Inman, and I am happy to be back in the saddle after a week off. GenWealth co-founder John Shrewsbury is in the co-hosting seat today. Everything went okay, I assume, while I was gone for a week?
I didn't get a week off.
You didn't get a week off?
What happened?
Were you on the show? I didn't get a chance to watch.
Well, I wasn't. I don't think I was on the show.
Yeah, but you were still working.
I was still working.
Well, you're always working, though.
Well, that's because I own the place.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I did notice my headset levels were lower, so somebody who sat in the chair did not want their headset levels as high as me.
That's because you're old.
That's part of it. And you should know because you like your headset levels
That's
pretty
exactly
high too.
right. Touche, my friend.
Yeah, we're glad to be back though and talking the What's Happening segment, which is basically our marketing crew that scours the internet, checking out social media posts and online articles for kind of what's trending, if you will, or what's kind of making news. And we got a really good one. I say the marketing crew, they do most of it. John actually kind of stumbled across this one and wanted to talk a little bit about it. So apparently, I'm learning so much, by the way, by doing this segment because I don't check the social media. I'm not watching who is influencing me or who is influencing society, but there are a lot of people who are. There's apparently a lady named Mrs. Dow Jones, or that's her moniker or tagline. Her name is actually Haley Sachs, and she posted that the American dream is very dead for millennials and Gen Z, so for younger people. And she's 35 years old, by the way, so she fits into this category. So basically, the big takeaway here, she's a CEO of Finance is Cool, and she makes posts all the time and has people who follow her. I did a little research on her background, so she has kind of been in the entertainment industry for her career and has read some books by Warren Buffett and watched some financial YouTube videos, but I can't find any indication that she is licensed or, well, she can't probably be to say the things that she says. But it is an interesting concept that she brings up because it is tapping into, I think, a societal mindset that is very real. Young people have a different outlook. That is very true on their ability, John, to succeed or achieve what their version of the American dream is. And that's part of this article is that, I took this quote away, what we want from our lives is different, she writes. We want time. We want freedom. We want ownership. It's so different than being locked up in this corporate structure. Now, I find that a very interesting mindset because I would argue we want, the older generations want the same thing. Time, freedom, ownership. That things haven't changed. It's just the path that we go to may have changed and the mentality about our ability to do it has changed.
You know, for years, Scott, I have observed that one of the big problems in society as a whole is the next generation wants to start off where mom and dad left off. Mm-hmm. They want to start with as big a house as mom and dad had after a whole career of working. They want to start off with the same nice cars. They want to start off with the same money to have the freedom and luxury to do all these things. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with the American dream. The American dream is still alive. The problem is that the work ethic is not there to go through what mom and dad had to go through to achieve the American dream. Freedom isn't free. We know that from, the price that, servicemen and women pay to allow us the opportunity to have freedom. But freedom isn't free because you have to work for it. You have to build something for yourself. Scott, I was reading this and the thought crossed my mind, be careful who you follow, because they may lead you nowhere. And here's the challenge that I have with Mrs. Dow Jones and this whole thing of the American dream is very dead, and not just dead, but very dead.
Can you be very dead?
I don't know. But as long as you let somebody tell you that, you're going to believe it. And if you believe it, then it is dead. Yeah. But I would argue that the American dream is alive and well. Scott, I would argue that between the two of us, we are living the American dream. Now, we're not millennials or Gen Zers, but we have lived from very meager beginnings to a fair level of success. Both of us have in both of the careers that we have both had. Yeah. And so I think that the American dream is very alive for those that want to pay the price. Yeah. and there is a price, because if there's no price, then there is no value. And so I just, when I ran across this, I was like, man, this is really unfortunate, because how many people are going to be influenced by someone who knows absolutely nothing? She's read some Warren Buffett books, and she has, been in the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
I have no idea how someone allows themselves to be influenced by someone who knows nothing. I would at least think that you would want to go and be influenced by someone who has gone before you and has plowed this ground and understands, okay, here is what it takes to achieve whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. I just don't think Miss Dow Jones has a clue.
Yeah, and I think if, reading through the article, I think she's pointing out some of the things that we are, in the sense that the generation that she's a part of feels that way, that the American dream is very dead. She talks about how young Americans are increasingly turning to sports betting and even prediction markets as a financial strategy. And we do know numbers are going off the charts on sports betting. But to me, it's the headline that is the danger. And because a lot of people are not going to read the article. And I'm not saying that she's totally on our side on this, but she is pointing out the mentality over maybe the reality. But the headline says you can't do it. Well, that's what the headline says.
It's clickbait.
Right.
It clearly is clickbait. But also, let's think about why people are turning to sports betting. It's because that we have not provided a foundation for them in terms of financial education and financial training. They've seen mom and dad struggle with money. They don't know any more than what mom and dad knew about money, and so they're going to try something different.
It's in their face all the time.
Yeah, and so I think that society has some blame here of not being nurturing of that next generation to teach them the basic financial principles that are necessary to win in this world and in society. I think that frankly, the opportunities that are out there today, Scott, are probably 20 or 30 times more than they were when we were growing up.
Yes.
Simply because you've got access to more information, you've got access to more opportunity online. Think about all the things that you can do online from your home that you could never do back when we were young. And so I think it's just one of those perception things that is a dangerous perception to be touting by somebody that is a so-called financial influencer who has no more knowledge about this than warm spit.
Yeah, and I'll try to end this by offering a couple of very brief case studies. I'm going to use my son and my stepson in this scenario. When you talk about that opportunity, my son is participating in what they call the gig economy. He sits at his house and makes videos and puts them on YouTube and gets compensated for that. That's an opportunity that did not exist in previous generations, for sure, because the technology didn't even exist. And then I think about my stepson, who has actually gone out and decided to start a roofing company, believe it or not.
Wow.
Didn't see it coming, by the way, at all. But he has found that he created an LLC and he's doing a roofing company. He's 20 years old, and you know what the key to his success has been? He shows up, and he goes and he goes after it, and he got in front of real estate agents and says, "Here, if you have a client that needs to replace a roof, I'm here. I'm going to answer my phone." And I think that's a lot of it too these days.
I have said for a long time that if I had the inclination to be in the contracting business, I could run everybody out of the business, because I'd show up.
That's right.
Because contractors just they don't, and that's a generalization. But as a general rule, try to get somebody to come to your house on Tuesday at 3:00 to meet you to talk about something. Maybe not.
Right.
And that's how that works. And your son, your stepson, has found an opportunity.
Right.
He's found where the defense is weak, and he's going after that. That is the essence of the American dream.
Yeah.
Look at the landscape and drive toward where the opportunity is.
Maybe the American dream has changed. Maybe it looks different. The path may be a little bit different, but I definitely want to say, too, to wrap it up, don't let her tell you don't invest in a 401k. And I don't think she was definitely saying that, but she does say maxing out your 401k, buying a house, retiring at 65, that's dead. It's not dead. Financial independence is still out there. That part of the path remains the same. How you choose to be employed and where you choose to get your income, how that works may be changed, but it is certainly not dead, and by no means very dead.
Yeah.
All right, our next subject. This is an interesting headline from the Motley Fool: Why the Iran War could deliver the biggest Social Security raise in years, looking for a silver lining in the conflict in the Middle East. But certainly, it's not hard to draw the line here. While the war is hopefully coming to an end, I know there's been some encouraging news regarding that over the last week or so. The point of the article is basically that energy prices have driven up overall inflation, and at this particular time, here as we kind of get close to the third quarter of the year, we are entering the time where Social Security measures its annual cost of living adjustment. It's actually calculated from third quarter CPI data, July, August, and September. So if inflation is going up because energy prices have been driven up by the Iran conflict, then the concept is that Social Security checks are going to go up in 2027, and they're expecting now about a 4.2% bump in 2027, and that would be great. That would be very good for Social Security recipients. The problem is the good news of the headline, when you start to go underneath all of the details of that, starts to kind of wane.
It does. And, you know, Scott, I think about when we have these kind of discussions, I think about when people, opine. I was in front of a guy just the other day who said, yeah, back in the day, we could get 12% CDs at the bank. And I said, yes, and inflation was 16%.
That's right.
Or whatever it was back then. And so, you know, it is a give and take situation here. So the good news long term for people who are on Social Security is that if you get a good inflation bump, then the next inflation bump compounds on top of this one, and all of your future benefits kind of ride on this elevated level of inflation at 4.4% to 4.2, somewhere in that neighborhood is what we're estimating for the Social Security increase this year. That is good news. But what is the bad news is that you are, number one, having to pay more for things, and so it gets consumed over the course of time. And then secondly, if you are looking at things like, paying for or taking part in investments that are fixed income investments and that type of thing, that may have a negative effect on that. So, I think, Scott, when you look at we had a pretty good increase, I believe, in 2023 off of the inflation that we had in 2022.
Yeah.
So think about maybe that one was somewhere in the 7% range, if I remember right. So you've got 7% in 23, and here we are in 26. We're going to get another 4%, and there were inflation increases in between those two as well. And so Social Security is trying to keep up with the rising cost of living. And that's why that's happening right now. What this does, though, is it gives you a rising floor of a part of your guaranteed income structure in retirement. And if you're properly structured as far as your guaranteed income is concerned, you probably have Social Security, maybe a pension, maybe a stream of guaranteed income from some type of annuity product or something like that would provide for all of your fixed expenses. And so it is a good thing that Social Security is getting this bump. And I think that, if you can backhandedly credit the Iran war for that, then all the better.
Yeah, and I think the challenge becomes with that cost of living adjustment is the CPI does not include a lot of senior costs, and those typically go up at a higher rate, things like prescription medication, healthcare costs, and then you start to look at what is the Medicare premium going to be next year, because that's where we see, I can't tell you how many times I've sat with a client who said, yeah, I got that cost of living bump from Social Security, but my net increase is $15 a month because the Medicare Part B premium went up by more than the cost of living adjustment on the Social Security check. So it can get eaten up. So I think it's a reminder for me that, yes, it is a good thing. I mean, it's always a good thing, especially for people who are just living on the fixed income of Social Security. For them to get any kind of a raise, we are certainly happy about that. But it is a little bit of a misnomer to think it's going to help you as much as it looks like it would from that headline. And I would say, too, there's a lot of news over the last week or so on the future of Social Security and some new things kind of coming to light, at least for me. We've talked about it for years on the incoming deadline of 2032. Sometimes it says 2033, that the trust fund's going to run out of money. That's still in play, but some of the fixes that are out there may become more difficult to implement or may have to be implemented at a more severe cost. And I want to encourage you, we did a fastest 4 minutes in finance on that this week. So if you haven't signed up for that, I want to encourage you to do it. It's going to be a part of the GenWealth Radio Hour, so if you're with us on radio, you'll hear it in just a little bit. But if you are watching online or you're listening on a podcast, you can always sign up for the fastest 4 by texting the word FAST to 501-381-5228, or just visit our website, fastest4, that's the number 4.com. To sign up. It's signing up is really just implementing your email address for us so that we send you the video version of the fastest 4 every Friday morning. And that's all we're going to do. We're not going to blow your email inbox up with other material. We want to just get that to you. We do it every week, and it's a really good one this week on Social Security. All right, moving on to our next topic. This one's an article from Kiplinger about Dave Ramsey. An emergency fund is not about making money, quote, in quotes there, Dave Ramsey's 9 ways to protect your retirement. And that emergency fund quote is one of the 9 ways, but there's a lot of good stuff in here. We're big fans of Dave Ramsey. We get sideways with him occasionally with some of the things he says, but for the most part, as a general rule, he has some great sound advice for people who are trying to achieve financial independence. And looking through this, we don't have time to do them all, but we'll talk over a couple of the things that he talks about. And we can start with Social Security, John, because we just talked about Social Security. He says Social Security is just icing on the cake, not the cake itself. Now, when it comes to counting on Social Security, we have just laid out some possible cracks, some kinks in the armor for sure with it. But I don't know that I would phrase it as the icing on the cake. It is not the cake itself. It's not the whole cake. But I don't think it's icing. I would say it's that lower layer. It's the first layer you're going to bake.
Or it's the plate, that the cake is
that's true too.
The cake is sitting on, because Social Security is a regular, predictable, dependable income stream. Yeah. Now, if you want to be real conservative, a la the things that you've talked about Social Security's future, then reduce your Social Security projection by about 20-25% and plan from there. But it is going to be there. It is a misnomer to think that the Social Security system is going to die in 2032. It is not going to do that, because there is still money in the system coming through from paychecks that are being earned right now today that is funding 70-75% of the retirees' income that would be coming from Social Security in 2032. So that it is not going to go away. It may get reduced. I cannot imagine the firestorm that would happen politically if that were to happen. So I believe that Congress will step in at the last minute and do something about it. But I do not think it should be relegated as just being extra money, unless you have so much money that you can build a bulletproof guaranteed income stream without Social Security. And it's just, maybe it does get relegated to icing on the cake at that particular point in time. And maybe if you have Dave Ramsey money, it probably is that kind of deal. And let me, by the way, say that Dave Ramsey is a lot smarter than Miss Dow Jones, as she's so called, but he still has some issues on some things.
So he also mentions, he talks about inflation, that it comes and goes, and so do returns with reference to the market. What you don't want to do is draw out so much that you end up running out of money. That is a certainty for sure as far as the soundness of that statement. I think it's a very big point that he makes. Now, he doesn't really get into the details of how that withdrawal strategy should be set up, other than to say you should work with a financial advisor and build that strategy. And I think that is sound advice. That's what we do here on a day in and day basis at GenWealth Financial Advisors. And I think it's important that you talk about the need, because inflation does come. I don't know whether it ever really goes. It comes, and it continues to come.
Continues to come.
So you're going to have to be invested in some asset classes like stocks and real estate that historically have outpaced inflation over the long term. So with a piece of that, you have to stay invested. But when he says you don't want to draw out too much, I think that's very important too. And Dave has famously advocated taking out too much, I might point out, because we've called him to the carpet before about an 8% withdrawal rate because the market's going to do 8%. I think he's probably backed that back in. You hear this thing called the 4% rule. A lot of people are aware of that if you
Yep.
take out 4% of your overall portfolio value, that's a safe withdrawal rate. But that's really making it too basic, John.
Well, and it's argued even by academics
That's right.
whether 4% is even too much. So I think it really does not. It is not a percentage. It is a strategy, and your strategy can entail how much you can withdraw from retirement. If you have a good, sound financial strategy where you don't have to worry about what your guaranteed income streams look like, then your withdrawal rate matters a lot less than it does if you are dependent upon that withdrawal rate to fund your guaranteed income. So, Dave talks to a lot of people. Dave is an entertainer, just like Ms. Dow Jones is. Dave is not necessarily a credentialed financial expert. He does have some good things to say. We do get sideways with him when he gets into the investment area and in the retirement income planning area. I don't think he's got the experience to really lay into that like he does. But the bottom line, we don't look at on this show, we don't grade financial celebrities on their brand. We grade them on their advice. And I can tell you that Ms. Dow Jones' advice sucks. It's terrible. Don't listen to her for any kind of mindset at all. Dave Ramsey has some great things to say he talks to lots of people about things like debt elimination, savings, discipline, avoiding lifestyle creep, things of that nature. All of that is great, sound advice. I just wish Dave would stick to his knitting on what he knows and what he doesn't know.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Hey, great What's Happening segment today. We didn't even get to a couple of them there. That's usually par for the course when we get rolling. But
we got too much to say.
We are coming to the end of that segment. And so on the GenWealth Radio Hour, stay tuned. The Get Ready for the Future show starts right now.
You've been sold the idea that financial independence is all about some number on your account statement, or even worse, that you don't qualify because of where you started out. That's just not true. It's not about some well-kept secret of the wealthy. It's about finding the right information and knowing how to apply it. On the Get Ready for the Future show, we're answering your questions so you can start making real financial change today. The journey to true financial independence begins right here, and it starts with you.
Continuing our mission to help people discover, protect, and share true financial independence, this is the Get Ready for the Future show, and we welcome you on board once again, where we're answering your questions about your money, about investments, about retirement, whatever you want to know. We are here to help give you some education about it, not specific advice. We wouldn't do that on the show, but we definitely like to educate, give you some information, and potentially some action steps to push you along your way to financial independence. My name is Scott Inman. I'm an advisor in the West Little Rock office at GenWealth, and GenWealth co-founder John Shrewsbury on board to help answer some questions today. And we've got a good one when you talk about your path to financial independence and helping people push their way down that road. You have got to, we talk about it all the time, one of the biggest catalysts or the biggest factors that will determine your success and becoming financially independent, I think, is margin. We use that word a lot. And that's just the gap. It's very simply the gap between your expenses and your income. How much margin you have in your life creates cash flow. It creates the opportunity to save and invest. And that's how you reach financial independence. It's pretty simple, but it's not easily put into practice, as the case is pointed out here by our first question. Wyatt from Benton asks, I've been using a budgeting app for years, but I still feel like I'm not making progress. What am I missing? Can definitely feel that way, Wyatt. I think the budgeting app is a great tool for many people, and you don't have to use it to create that margin and to create a path to financial independence. But it is a frustration that we hear. But I think it's good in some ways that you do get some frustration because you have identified the problem if you have that budgeting app in place. But the app is the map. It's not the destination, and it really can't change behavior. You've got to do that.
Let me just say this about this question. If it was easy, everybody would do it.
That's right.
If financial independence were easy, then everybody would be financially independent. The missing equation with this app and the tool that you are using is discipline. It is the focus, the discipline, and the app provides the system. But if you kind of think about that in a bit of a triangle, you're having the focus, the system, and the discipline to achieve the goal that you're looking for. All three of those are incredibly important. And the app is not going to do it for you. The app is not going to go in and record your expenses. The app is not going to tell you, don't go spend this. It's just going to tell you what has happened. It is going to account for it in such a way that you can see it. What the app is calling on you to do is to be disciplined in what you're seeing in that app and go through and eliminate the things that you're spending money on that are causing you to not make progress toward your goal. Scott, it's as simple as that. I'm sure we want to talk more about that,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, Wyatt needs to just knuckle down and just white knuckle it until this thing gets done and he gets into a rhythm. Because once you get that flywheel going, once you get in a rhythm of accountability and discipline and having the focus on this that you need to have, then it becomes easier.
Yeah.
But until you do that, then it's always going to be a struggle.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that the app is going to give you the information. It's going to do the math part of it for you. It's going to show you what you are currently doing, but it is not going to affect the change in your behavior. And I think that's what you're going to have here. If you've been doing it for years and you're not feeling like you're making progress, then you haven't made the changes inside of that budgeting information that need to be changed. And I would probably argue that you've probably gotten a raise in income somewhere along the way if it's been years. Maybe you or your wife, if you're married, and lifestyle creep maybe set in. When that income goes up, it is very easy to start thinking about buying more things, getting a bigger house, nicer car, all those things. And there's nothing wrong with that if it works inside the framework of an overall plan. And I would say that if all you're doing, Wyatt, is working a budgeting app, that's not solely on its own going to make that change. I would suggest that what is going to make that change is an overall roadmap for you to financial independence, a plan that doesn't just show you how to save money, reduce expenses, but it shows you that if you do that, and if you create another few $100s a month and you're able to contribute to your 401k and get the full employer match, where is that going to take you? And if you're in your 30s and you need 30 years till retirement, that can really put something down in front of you, John, that shows you motivation that maybe is lacking when you're just using an app. I mean, again, I'm a proponent of budgeting apps, but it can be a demotivator when you see what's happening.
It's a shiny object. It's a gadget until you actually begin to know how to use it. And here's how you know how to use it. You begin to look at those expenses and you go down the line and you go, what can I do without? What is it that is standing in my way? What is it that is not as important as the goal that I'm going for? And when you begin to reassign the duty of those dollars away from that, more frivolous expenditure toward the intentional goal that you have, then that is what will drive success for you. You've got to name every dollar and say, this is where this is going to go. Give it a job to do. Name your goals. It's not save more. It is what is it that you're trying to achieve. What goal, specific goal, is it that you're trying to attain? And put a dollar amount on that and then work toward that. And then when you achieve it, celebrate it, because that's the payoff. That's the hard work that has to get done. Scott, I think that even if you set aside maybe 15 or 30 minutes a month to do this kind of exercise and have a money meeting with you and the app. And if you're married, definitely have your spouse involved in that and understand where money goes. Money is always in motion. It's going somewhere. And it's either going to go where you tell it to, or it's going to have a mind of its own and just disappear out of your wallet. I know it magically doesn't do that, but it somehow gets spent on things that are unintentional as opposed to those things that you say are intentional.
Wyatt, I'd finish up by saying hire a coach. Find a financial advisor that can help put that plan together for you and then walk hand in hand through the journey with you, because that accountability, those meetings can be very good for structuring your budget, making sure you stick to it, your savings plan, and your goal setting. It can all be in rhythm when you work with a financial advisor. If you want more free info about retirement, investments, and your money, we want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Yeah, we've got one. You search for GenWealth Financial Advisors and hit the subscribe button, and there's all sorts of great information and resources there for you. All right, our next question is from Jeff. He sent this in on Facebook. I started moving my after-tax savings into an In-Plan Roth Rollover plan when I was 54 years old. I know the rules about Roths: must be in the Roth account for 5 years, must be 59 and a half years old to draw tax-free. Is the IPRR account all tax-free when I reach the two requirements, or does each move of the money have to be in the account for 5 years? He even put, that's a very detailed question, by the way.
I was about to say.
He even provided some additional details. So he said, say I had $100,000 in the after-tax account. I moved $25,000 every year until I move that $100,000. Would I have to wait 5 years after the last addition to the IPRR plan? Great question, one that very few people think of, and we do see a lot of after-tax money in people's 401ks when they come in, and we move that over to a Roth IRA. There are two separate 5-year rules, so we don't want you to confuse them. The first 5-year rule governs tax-free earnings withdrawals and runs from the date the Roth account was first established, not from each individual contribution or rollover. If your Roth has been open since you were 54 and you're now 59 and a half, that first clock is satisfied.
That's right. The second 5-year rule is specific to conversions and rollovers. So that includes in-plan Roth rollovers. It applies to each individual conversion separately, and it exists to prevent the 10% early withdrawal penalty on converted amounts taken out before 59 and a half. So each $25,000 IPRR move does technically start its own 5-year clock, but that clock is about avoiding the 10% early withdrawal penalty, not about whether the money is tax-free.
Yeah.
Once you reach 59 and a half and your Roth IRA account has been established for at least 5 years, the penalty no longer applies, and applies to any conversion regardless of when they were made. At that point, the individual conversion clock is largely irrelevant. So that is the core essence to that question. But Scott, I think that what could be lost to our audience in the detail of this is why. Yeah. Why do you do this? Yeah. Well, I think that there's great advantage to doing Roth conversions early in your approach to retirement, or early in your years after you retired, maybe as late as to when you hit RMD age, because you can not just reduce your taxes, but reduce your taxes significantly over your lifetime if you go ahead and pay the tax on that now.
Yeah, and I think, Jeff, it's great that you're doing that. I think when you talk to us about the details of how much you're doing, I think that should be done with some very specific goals in mind and understanding what John's kind of talking about from a tax situation. You know, we use software in our planning process that once we have the income plan designed for our clients, and when we say income plan, withdrawal strategy, if you will, from their retirement assets, we can overlay a piece of that shows the tax ramifications of how you withdraw it. In other words, if it's all in traditional IRA money for a certain client and they're approaching retirement just like you are, Jeff, then what effect would there be if there were some Roth conversions done in that case, as opposed to letting the traditional IRA money build over the course of their retirement, and then the client hits RMD age and is forced now to take a certain amount out by the government, which would let them lose control and flexibility over how that tax strategy is implemented. So if you do Roth conversions, which basically means you turn those traditional IRA dollars into Roth IRA dollars in any given tax year while you're working or early in retirement, which works very well, then you pay the taxes in that year, you get it moved over into a Roth IRA, and you have tax-free growth for the rest of your life, and RMDs are not going to apply. So winging it, and I don't know that I'm not saying that, Jeff, you're winging it, but if you're doing it without that long-term or overall strategy in place, I would encourage you to reach out and walk through the GenWealth Ready to Retire process to see that software and see that effect on, if I move this over, what's it going to look like for me from a tax perspective? And I'm going to tell you real quick how to do that. You can call 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526, or you can send an email to info@getreadyforthefuture.com. And if you want it to be a phone conversation to start, we can certainly hook you up with a financial advisor to have that discussion. But certainly an in-person appointment or a virtual appointment would work very well to begin walking through your plan for retirement so that you're not just kind of doing this in a vacuum.
Yeah, you've got to be understanding of how this goes. And one of the cool things, Scott, is that we have software that can model this in all kinds of different ways.
Yeah.
I just recently went through about 5 iterations of a plan with a client, very detailed very detailed plan, looking at all kinds of different things. But central to this was a Roth conversion strategy. And we literally are going to save this family millions of dollars, because here's the other thing about this. When money is left to the kids, if it's Roth money, it is not subject to any tax whatsoever. No inheritance tax, nothing. It's just they have to take it out over a 10-year period out of the Roth IRA, but there's no tax consequence to that.
Yeah.
And so it is a wonderful planning exercise to go through. And it was great to have that kind of detail in that plan to walk them through and show them, here is why you want to execute on this strategy.
Yeah, I think that's my favorite thing of the software we use is the toggle button.
Yep.
Put it in, pull it out.
That's
It just
right.
Walks out. Yep.
Yeah, do it this way or do it this way. And you get a side-by-side comparison. You can do it this direction, and here's your result. You can do it in this direction, and here's your result.
Hey, Jeff, we want to send you a free Get Ready for the Future show tumbler. We're going to name your question the question of the week. Very detailed. We really enjoyed it. Thanks for reaching out. To get that free tumbler, please email us. Just send the email to show@getreadyforthefuture.com. No obligation on your part. Just tell us where we need to send it. And thanks for sending in that question. Next, it's Bridget from Little Rock. We're 60 and just paid off our home. Should we redirect what we were paying on the mortgage into investments or savings? Man, this is a good question, and one that is very important, Bridget, in terms of your retirement income plan. And that's what we're going to go to. But first of all, congratulations on getting rid of that mortgage. We are big proponents in getting mortgage free, at least by your retirement date or very early into retirement. It's not going to be able to happen for everybody, but if you can accomplish that, it is a result. The result is great to have your expenses lowered permanently for the rest of your retirement, and it gives you so much more flexibility with your retirement income. I know a lot of people, and this was in the Dave Ramsey article before we didn't get to, but he always talks about pay off your mortgage, pay off your mortgage, pay off your mortgage. And a lot of people will argue, yeah, but if you can get more interest on the money, if you have a low interest mortgage, it makes more sense to invest and grow the money as opposed to paying off the mortgage. And there's some financial basis for that, but I think it neglects the importance of what Bridget is talking about here. We're getting ready for retirement. We're trying to set up a retirement income strategy and plan, and by knocking out potentially $800,000, $900,000 a month mortgage, it is a huge benefit regardless of what the math says on the interest rates.
Yeah, and the mortgage is gone in this particular case. So the question is now what do you do with this money? And so I think that the first thing that, the question was investments or savings. Well, I don't think it's an either or. I think if you have a good solid emergency fund, and if you're thinking about retirement, then you're not at risk of losing your income source. You want to have emergency savings and to accommodate what may be coming down the pike that you don't see right now. You need that emergency savings, but you probably need about 3 to 6 months income in that emergency savings. If you invest the money, then you're going to be able to do some cool things with that money over time. But investments are for longer term. The savings is much more short term. So if you have that financial foundation of 3 to 6 months income in your savings plan, then there's probably not a need to redirect it, because it's just going to sit there and earn a meager amount of interest at today's interest rates. It's better than it used to be, but still not great. You could invest that money and let it grow for the future, let it grow for your family, become an inheritance, whatever the case may be. you could sock that away even after you retire. If you've got that extra income coming in because you don't have that mortgage, then you could actually begin to reinvest those dollars into after-tax accounts and have that as a step up in cost basis when you pass away, to pass on to your kids or your grandkids or whatever the case may be. So there's a lot of pivot room here, Scott, I believe. But I think that the foundational thing is that you got to be sure that emergency fund is in place, because life still happens even though you retire.
Yeah, and if that emergency fund is in place and you're just trying to determine whether you want bigger piles of cash versus investable assets, that becomes the next driver or of decision, is to build that retirement income plan. So if you know what you have saved, do you know what that's going to provide you on a monthly basis, on an annual basis, what you'll be withdrawing? Do you have an investment strategy in place and a retirement income plan in place? Once you know that, you'll kind of know, hey, I'm on track, or maybe I've even potentially overfunded retirement. I've got more investable assets than I need to produce the income that I want for the rest of my life. If you're in that situation, then I think it makes sense to maybe go back to the cash savings, because I do think in those early years of retirement, if you're planning on replacing a vehicle, if you're planning on replacing 2 vehicles, it would be advantageous to have more cash than you would under a normal emergency savings fund situation. But you've got to know the answers to your retirement income problem before you can make those decisions.
Yeah, once you get that retirement income problem kind of nailed down, the other thing that I think about in this situation, Scott, is, if you have, let's say, qualified money in your retirement accounts, if you wanted to spend a big chunk of money going on a trip or buying a house or a boat or whatever the case may be, you got to pay taxes on that money. Yeah. With the money that you are saving in your paycheck off of this house, then you can stack that money up, and you've got sort of a war chest, if you will, that you can do whatever you want to. It could be your dream account. Yeah. It could be your, mad money, as some people call it. You have to think about what the possibilities are, and then run toward those possibilities. Be very diligent. We were talking in the last segment about, the guy that was working with the budgeting app and the need to be intentional about things. Be intentional about what is possible. Make a run at that, and give your best efforts at what you could do in retirement, since you now have this portion of freedom by paying off the mortgage. You've got, thousands of dollars a month now freed up that you can do something with. Make it productive.
And it's very common. I think we're probably talking to a lot of people here. If they're 60 years old, 55 years old, they get the kids out of the house, they pay off some debt, they pay off their mortgage, all of a sudden their margin explodes and they don't really know what they should do with it. And that's why they need some help from a financial advisor. Building a plan for your retirement allows you to know where to direct those dollars in your final years of work.
I have to tell you, I was sitting with a couple of clients just yesterday, and they said, man, we're about to come into a big windfall. And I'm like, oh, it is something I didn't know about. What's happening? And they went, we're getting 2 kids off our payroll. And they were just so excited about it that their margin is just going to explode because they don't have those kids on the payroll anymore. A really, really cool environment to be in as you head into retirement.
Great opportunity to catch up if you're behind, or beef up if you're not.
Absolutely.
All right, our final question is from Taylor in Conway. I'm 50 and want to retire at 60. What can I do in these next 10 years to be as prepared as possible? Well, 10 years is still a great time frame, Taylor, to not only be asking this question, but to have the time to do something about it. A really important question, and asking it at 50 instead of 55, 56, 58 is going to help you tremendously. But I'll tell you this, you've got to work through this in steps. And I know we've talked about the plan, and we always talk about the plan, but you've got to know your numbers, and your numbers start with your retirement income. And you're going to have some pretty good idea about that by the time you reach 50. I'm 53 years old. I'm headed for financial independence at 60. Then I can see what I'm going to need for that to happen, right? So I know my income numbers. Do you know your Social Security? Do you have a pension? What other income sources are you going to have? At what ages do they kick in? If you're going to retire at 60, you're going to have to live at least a couple of years without taking that Social Security check, because 62 is the earliest age you can claim it. But do you need to claim it at 62, or when do you need to claim it? getting an idea about those income sources is very important. A lot of people don't even know their Social Security numbers when they come in to see us. And then what is going to be needed from your investments to create the income that you want in retirement. And then you can back into that using our help or a financial advisor's help, walking through the GenWealth Ready to Retire process and backing into what you're going to need to have saved. What's your number then? Income number first, asset number comes second, and then you have some targets.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you can run at those targets and try to do everything that you can right now to max out as much as you possibly can on your investment accounts, your 401k plan, your 403b plan, whatever plan you have available. You want to throw as much money as you can in that, because the opportunity to do that on a pre-tax basis is going to go away at the time that you retire. I think that does make a lot of sense. But I also think that you've got to look at the debt side of the equation.
Yep.
Try to pay off as much debt as possible, because just like we were saying earlier with that couple that paid off their house, you got a lot of freedom when you don't have a mortgage staring you in the face. And so that allows for there to be a lot of discretionary spending when you retire. And discretionary spending in retirement is a heck of a lot of fun. I see our clients do it all the time. They get to go on trips. They get to buy the things that they've thought about all this time. They get to experience life in such a way that they've been working so hard to get to that point. They actually need the money to be able to do that. And so, like we said earlier, Scott, if you can have a war chest of after-tax money that you've already paid taxes on, that there's not a big tax consequence for making major expenditures, that's a great way to do that. Maybe that's in a Roth IRA. Maybe that is in just a savings account that you can then take that money and use to do those expenditures. But you've got to be able to set yourself up to be able to enjoy the freedom that you have worked so hard for. So I think 10 years is really, frankly, enough to change almost everything that you've got going on.
Yeah, and I think it's also the perfect time to address the blind spots. So we'll spend the last minute or so we have talking about that. Don't let healthcare be a blind spot. First of all, you've got, if you're looking at retiring at 60, you're not going to be eligible for Medicare until age 65. So that means you've got to create a 5-year healthcare plan. What are you going to do for insurance? Is there an option to carry it over from your employer? At least part of that time. COBRA often would let you maybe go 18 months into that before you had to go out into the marketplace and get some. So explore those options with someone you trust. Healthcare-related costs, even through retirement, has got to be planned for too. So when we talk about that income plan, how much do you want? You've also got to consider what you potentially are going to need later in life. So many of our clients want to spend in the early years and maybe reduce their income on the back end, and that's not really a good strategy. You might not increase it at the same rate, but you're going to have to continue to have your income go up, because you may not be doing the things you want to do anymore, but you're going to have a cost to still be around, still be existing. And then the other key thing in the last few seconds I've got here is you've got to protect what you're building. And so still following that train of thought with healthcare, what are you going to do in the event of a long-term care need, which is going to affect 70% of us. Statistically, we're going to need a long-term care coverage, or we're going to need some long-term care money, whether that comes from an insurance policy or whether it is built into your plan through investments and future income planning. So lots to consider. But again, I think it's great. And if you're 50 and you've got a 10-year window to retirement, now is the perfect time to be planning and thinking about the changes that may need to be made. You heard the final bell. I'll give you the final thoughts.
Well, in looking at all the things that we've talked about today, Scott, I want to make this relatively easy for folks. I don't know about you, but I have a ever decreasing amount of brain space that I have the capacity to absorb information. We are in the information overload society right now. And, Ms. Dow Jones says this, and Dave Ramsey says that, and this person says this. What about you? What do you say? What do you say about your goals? What do you say about your dreams? What do you say about what's possible in your retirement? You need someone to come alongside you and get down in the weeds of these types of questions that we've been dealing with on this show. That doesn't come from a social influencer. It doesn't come from a celebrity on the radio. It comes with a trusted financial advisor that you build a relationship with, and you work together toward a plan for your financial independence. If there's any other agenda other than what I just laid out, then it's the wrong relationship. You've got to be totally focused on this, because most folks that are trying to become financially independent are just like me and Scott. We have a limited amount of brain space. We need to get very clear on our direction, the moves we need to make, whether we've got 2 years before we retire, 10 years before we retire, or we are already retired and we're just concerned about the future and what kind of uncertainty there is out there. So those are the things, Scott, that I think are really important.
And that's all the time we have for this week's Get Ready for the Future show in GenWealth Radio Hour. We thank you for being with us. And if you want to get a question into us, I want to encourage you to do that. Text or leave a voicemail to 501-381-5228, and we'll see you again next week.
The GenWealth Financial Team is available to you 24/7 at info@getreadyforthefuture.com, or call our offices at 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526. You should personally consult a financial advisor before making any investment, and no strategy can assure success. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Independent Advisor Alliance. Independent Advisor Alliance and GenWealth Financial Advisors are separate entities from LPL Financial.